Morning, and thank you for joining the media briefing for Council President Andrew Friedson. I'm Jordan Lindsay. Reporters, if you still need permission to record, you can note that in the chat. And if you have any questions throughout this briefing, you can note that in the chat or raise your hand and I will call on you accordingly. Now I'll toss it to Council President Andrew Friedson for opening remarks. Council President, to you.
Thank you, Jordan. I want to begin today by recapping a couple events I had the honor of joining these last few days, and then we'll turn to some council items and open it up to questions. Really appreciate you all joining us again this Monday morning. Last Thursday, it was an incredibly exciting day in Montgomery County. The county executive and council colleagues and I had the privilege of honoring legendary Olympic swimmer and Bethesda's own and Montgomery County's hometown hero, Katie Ledecky. We celebrated her achievements by unveiling an honorary road marker, declaring Katie Ledecky Lane outside of her alma mater, Stone Ridge School of the Sacred Heart in Bethesda, and to dedicate the day as Katie Ledecky Day. Katie is the best female athlete in the world. She's remained at the top of her sport for more than a decade and has already broken 16 world records and 37 national records. In fact, if you look up, as they did during the Olympics, the world records for her signature swim, you would have to scroll through more than 20 world records to find a name that isn't Katie Ledecky. She literally and in every way imaginable is in a league unto herself, achieving a level of excellence that has never been seen before in women's swimming. And it's something that all of us here in Bethesda and Montgomery County take as a source of intense pride, knowing where she started and where she has gone off to go and what she has been able to accomplish as the most decorated U.S. female Olympian of all time, which she emphatically became at the 2024 Paris Olympics. But it's not just what she's accomplished, it's how she's accomplished it. Her greatness as an athlete is enhanced by her goodness as a person. She has never forgotten her roots. She has always remained humble. She has noted that it was hard work more than natural gifts that have allowed her to achieve the unimaginable. And we are just incredibly proud of her as a hometown hero for all of her achievements, for the role model she has become to not only the girls at Little Flower and at her alma mater high school at Stone Ridge, where we were the other day, but for girls and women and all people all across our community and throughout the country. My team and I had a very busy weekend, an active weekend as well. I hope everyone had a chance to enjoy what was really nice fall weather. On Saturday, I had the privilege of participating in my hometown parade where I grew up, the Potomac Day Parade. It's an event in my council district organized every year by the Potomac Chamber of Commerce, and there are events for residents of all ages, which was great. And I also joined colleagues for reopening ceremony as well. Several colleagues were at Strathmore Local Park in Aspen Hill. Later on in the day, I joined Vice President Stewart and Council Members Will Jawando and Lorianne Sales in Bethesda at the Bethesda Theater in support of Eric's ID law, which is a legislative proposal that would allow people with invisible disabilities like autism, mental health concerns, and hearing impairments to voluntarily, on their own, decide to add one of three logos onto their Maryland driver's license. This law is expected to be introduced during the next Maryland legislative session, and I have been a longtime supporter of this effort, working with Eric and Linda, his powerhouse mother. And the two of them have just been incredible advocates for this issue and more broadly to make sure that those who may have invisible differences should not be invisible in our community. And it really is humbling to be able to work with them and to consider both of them dear friends of mine. I also visited the community health fair at Bethesda Chevy Chase High School, my mom's alma mater, in fact, organized by the Black Physicians Health Network. The health fair offered a number of free health screenings, including dental, vision, and hearing, and even provided attendees with free comprehensive blood work. It is a great example of how our partnerships in county government with local community partners and local physicians in an intentional way is really making a difference. And it was great to be able to stop by and to see that in action. Later in the evening, I was also able to join the Maryland Vietnamese Mutual Association's annual autumn banquet in Gaithersburg, which I attend every year, and the Potomac Community Resources 27th Annual Patricia Sullivan Benefit Dinner to raise funds for their continued work to support youth, families, and adults with intellectual and developmental disabilities. I've been proud to work with both of these organizations. The county has been proud to be able to partner with both of these organizations. It's one of the many ways that we are ensuring that we're being an inclusive community and making sure that everybody has access to services that they need. County government can't do that alone, and these organizations really demonstrate that on a day-to-day, week-to-week, year-to-year basis. This morning, I had the great privilege of joining Vice President Kate Stewart, who now represents the North Bethesda area, and Councilmember Lorianne Sales, as well as Senator Jeff Waldstreicher, who represents that area in District 18 at the state level, for the one-of-a-kind development in North Bethesda, right at the Grosvenor Metro at Strathmore Square. This unique partnership with Metro Strathmore and the Amazon Housing Equity Fund, among several others, offers 22% affordable units with access to world-class arts and quality housing along our most important transit line, the Metro. It's Metro's fourth transit-oriented development ribbon cutting with 1,300 units delivered this year. I am really proud of this project in particular. It is truly remarkable the way that the Strathmore Arts has been integrated along with the strategic closeness and proximity to some of our most important environmental assets with Rock Creek and the greenery, as well as turning a parking lot into a place. This was made possible by a legislative initiative, More Housing at Metro, that Councilmember Hans Remer and I previously sponsored in the last council. It was not without its detractors. It faced fierce opposition. In fact, we were able to overwhelmingly overturn a veto. And this project would not have been possible. The 22% affordable, including some deeply affordable housing at a top-of-the-art, state-of-the-art, top-of-the-line luxury building right in the most strategic place at a metro station that provides top-flight amenities and access to a membership at a world-class arts institution like Strathmore. It would not have been possible but for that bill, but for the legislative work that we were able to do. And so we're very proud of that and very proud of the fact that it is delivering on housing, turning a parking lot into a place, which is something that we need to be doing more of. I also, before turning to council items, wanted to take a moment to express our condolences to the Sonner family. His former Maryland judge and Montgomery County State's Attorney Andrew Sonner passed away just about a week ago on October 13th. Andy was elected Montgomery County State's Attorney in 1970 and served for more than 25 years. He started the Sonner Scholars Program that built ladders of opportunity for graduating law students to be able to pursue careers in prosecution and in public service. Throughout his life, Andy was committed to supporting justice and equity in our society. His legacy continues on in all of those he mentored, in all of those he has reached and has touched and has worked with, and in his Memorial Scholarship Fund, which honors his memory and ensures that it remains a blessing for decades to come. So we send our deepest condolences to his family and our depth of gratitude to them for sharing his life and him with our community and with us. We truly continue to feel the ripples of his impact and will continue to do so for generations to come. Switching gears to council business, we have the growth and infrastructure policy. We have been taking that up in the full council. We previously approved it out of the Planning, Housing, and Parks Committee. Tomorrow we'll hold an additional work session in the morning and take straw votes scheduled for the afternoon. on this policy, which establishes guiding principles and processes for matters concerning land use, growth management, and other related issues. We're tentatively scheduled to take final votes on October 29th, next week. And this is something that we are required legislatively and legally to do every 4 years, to take up our growth and infrastructure policy, which determines how we grow, where we grow, and under what circumstances we get the type of community that we want. Regularly reviewing this is one of the county's primary efforts to work with the planning department and work with our policymakers and Department of Transportation who implement some of the plans, as well as other executive agencies, to align the growth and infrastructure policy with goals established in our county's general plan, and proactively analyzing the county's current growth trends and travel patterns so that we can ensure that we have policies and land use plans that are equitable, fair, and effective. So we look forward to moving that process forward. We'll also have a Board of Health update. Tomorrow, the council will sit as the Board of Health and receive an update from our health officer, Dr. Keisha Davis, our deputy health officer, Sean O'Donnell, and our chief of public health, Dr. Nina Ashford. A few of the highlights that will be discussed tomorrow include efforts to provide flu and COVID-19 vaccinations to uninsured and underinsured residents, as well as ongoing collaboration with Montgomery County Public Schools since the closure of the Office of the Medical Director in June 2024. They created that position, have since eliminated that position. And so we'll hear about how that coordination and collaboration is going. We'll also talk about trends in substance use disorders and fatalities in Montgomery County, as well as broader mental health issues as well. The public health briefing is scheduled for 9:30 tomorrow morning, and I'd encourage everyone to tune in to hear directly from our public health team. With that, I would be happy to turn it back to you, Jordan, to see if there are any questions.
Thank you, Council President Friedson. Reporters, again, if you have any questions, you can note that in the chat or raise your hand and I will call on you accordingly. I don't see any questions at the moment. I'll give you a few minutes if you guys have any questions. Going once. Okay. Judy Hughes with the Only News, Greater Only News. Hi, Judy.
Hi, good morning.
Morning.
I think it's still morning. So Council President Friedson, I have a question about the growth and infrastructure policy and how that jibes with the attainable housing strategies. Back in the days of what they call it, the APFO, the Adequate Public Facilities Ordinance, you barely even brought a brick to a construction site before they had it all mapped out for schools and roads and any other kinds of infrastructure that they would need. But with the attainable housing, if I'm understanding it correctly, you can perhaps build something, one multifamily unit in a single family development, and those could add up eventually, but you would not have had adequate facilities in place. So how will that be reconciled?
Yeah, I'm trying to follow the question. So essentially, we still have to decide what we're going to do on attainable housing strategies. As you know, we have recommendations that have come from the Planning Board. We had 3 briefings in committee in the Planning, Housing, and Parks Committee. Ultimately, we need to move forward with a legislative proposal. The first next step after the 5 listening sessions as part of the unprecedented outreach that we have done even before legislation was put forward is to hear from our staff who have aggregated the feedback that we received at the listening sessions and at the portal, which is scheduled for next week for October 29th. So ultimately, we need to have a zoning text amendment or some legislative vehicle that determines what we would be moving forward with that. But in terms of your broader question, the attainable housing strategies from the Planning Board proposes 3 scales: small scale, medium scale, and large scale. The small scale is focused on by right redevelopment, which is largely a tear down and what happens with a tear down. The question before us, the question that has essentially been proposed and that the planning board has made a recommendation in terms of answering is when somebody tears a house down, what should they be able to build in its place? Should you be able to build something within the same footprint, the same lot coverage, the same height, the same standards? Should you be able to build something that has 2 units, a duplex, or 3 units, a triplex, or should you only be able to build a single family? Currently, what is happening is a 11, 12, 1,300 square foot up to a 2,000 square foot older home, usually built in the 40s, 50s, 60s, perhaps 70s, are torn down, and in its place of a 1,500 unit, or excuse me, 1,500 square foot unit, a 4,000 to 6,000 square foot very large home is built, intended for a single family. That has impacts as well, and that is held to a certain standard that goes strictly through the permitting process because it's a by right redevelopment. That is the question related to that, and there really isn't standards within the growth and infrastructure policy that is involved in teardowns, with the exception, although it's not directly involved in the growth and infrastructure policy, alongside the growth and infrastructure policy, we deal with impact taxes, even though it's a separate policy. We're dealing with that in the Government Operations Fiscal Policy Committee just made its recommendations, which will come to the council. And if you're adding a unit, in this case, a house is being torn down and replaced with a duplex, if that's ultimately what is decided, the duplex would pay an impact tax and would be, because it adds a net unit, and impact taxes are charged on the number of net units based on the student generation rate for school impact taxes, for instance. So there is some relationship, but it's not as direct. What much of the growth and infrastructure policy is involved in are larger developments, and that could be triggered, depending on what the council ultimately decides to do, by the medium and the large scale, and large scale in particular. The large scale in particular are proposed the larger unit buildings through optional method development, through the master plan process, through a much more rigorous regulatory review process. And there are significant, some people think too high, adequate public facilities requirements in order to address the impacts of larger scale development in that case. So there is a relationship to that. It's not something that needs to be reconciled per se. It is policies that layer on top of one another that address some of those issues in certain circumstances. But there is a difference between the by right question in the small scale recommendations on what happens when a house is torn down and what is legally allowed to be built in its place versus the large scale recommendations, which involve some of the larger apartment unit and apartment buildings and larger mixed multifamily units.
Thank you very much.
Great, thank you, Judy. Reporters, if you have any other questions, you can note that in the chat or raise your hand. Going once, going twice, 3 times. Okay, back to you, Council President. Thank you.
Appreciate it. I'll just close it out. I neglected to mention one important thing that we're doing this afternoon at the Planning, Housing, and Parks Committee and Education and Culture Committee. We're having a joint session this afternoon to discuss the affordable housing feasibility study for the Clarksburg Library Capital Project. In March of this year, as part of the FY25 to 30 capital improvements program, the council approved a $6.8 million supplemental appropriation for the Clarksburg Library project. The county acquired a parcel for $3.2 million in April to proceed with development of the library at a new site, which aims to increase opportunities for co-location of affordable housing. It's at the corner, for reference, of Maryland 355 and Stringtown Road. This is significant because it really is the implementation of a bill that I sponsored. It was the first bill that this council took up. I joke around it had more co-sponsors than any bill in history of Montgomery County because it included previous council members and new council members as co-sponsors. So more co-sponsors than council members. How's that for consensus? But Bill 3322, which I sponsored as noted and was co-sponsored by an overwhelming number of current and former colleagues, was enacted in January 2023 and enhanced the evaluation process by requiring a detailed feasibility study for affordable housing before the facility planning stage, allowing the council to make informed decisions on integrating affordable housing into capital projects. It gives the Department of General Services the opportunity, but also the requirement to submit to the council for applicable capital projects an evaluation of affordable housing at a library, rec center, police station, fire station, or any other general services building to determine the feasibility of co-location at any of these newly planned facilities. During this work session, we'll be joined by DGS, Department of General Services, to go over some guiding questions on the analysis they conducted on co-location at the Clarksburg site, and we'll make a decision to vote to approve or disapprove of the analysis. And I'll just note, this is important because, regardless of what we might think of individual proposals related to housing, we have to recognize that we have a housing crisis. We have to recognize that it is harder to afford to move in and access our community than it ever has been before. That's not a feeling, that's a fact. And we need to be intentional about how we address that challenge with a number of tools at our disposal. And one of those tools is making sure that the county, with our public land, is leading on these issues, is putting forward our own assets and our own resources to be part of the solution to the challenges that we face in housing. And co-locating land, which is becoming increasingly scarce and overwhelmingly expensive, is part of that effort. So this is an important bill. This is an important conversation that we're going to be having. And I look forward to continuing these efforts to make sure that the county is leading not just by the power, the county is leading not just by the example of our power, but by the power of our example, particularly when it comes to housing. So with that, I'll close it out. Appreciate everybody tuning in later today and tomorrow, and look forward to seeing you soon. Don't forget to vote.